And she's at her wit's end and definitely not going to be able to keep up her mental shields when Varys brings Dane in to read her memories. She's thinking how she should have told Xaden that she loves him, and I was like, obviously, because during the practice torture session, the secret she revealed was that she was in love with Xaden, and so she told other people and then just couldn't tell him. I was really annoyed about that situation. Luckily, Dane has this dagger, and instead of going for Violet like Varys told him to, Dane turns around and stabs Varys, and then cuts Violet free. I have to admit, I did not see that coming at all. The reason he let Violet go, though, is because he saw her memories and realized the truth, and was like ashamed of his dad, which I was proud of him, just shook. Xaden shows up to help. They declare their love for one another, so we're at least back to our starting point. Her mom shows up and she says that she had no idea that Violet had been down there for like 5 days being tortured. And then she comes clean, explaining to Violet that the reason she made her go to the Writers' Quadrant and become a writer was because she was doing so well as a scribe in training. Her mentor, main scribe, was going to basically have her be his replacement, his protege. And he was part of the Erasing History Club, and he was going to ask her to do that too. Violet's mom knew that if he asked her to do that, Violet would unravel the whole thing. She would come out with the truth. There was no way that she was going to be part of that scheme, and that she would be killed for it. And Violet's like, I thought you just thought lesser of the scribes. And her mom was like, the love of my life was a scribe. Like, the only reason I moved you was for your safety. So here's my thing with this, because this is probably my biggest critique of the book, is the extreme change that we see in Violet's mom. Because we just see her as so incredibly cold, and now in this book, halfway through, she's suddenly talking about the love of her life, how much she loves her daughter, and then later on we see her give her life for Violet. It just seemed so out of left field. Like, in the first book, we were led to believe that there's a chance that she played a part in Brennan and her father's death. Like, she is that brutal. And that maybe the reason there was a storm during the parapet was because her mom wanted Violet to slip off. And now we're sort of brought to this conclusion that she was using the storm and the winds to keep Violet standing. It just seemed like such a weird and sudden flip, where if her mom truly had those intense maternal instincts, love for her kids, all of that, why would we have not have seen that? Because even though she's a general, like, she didn't have to be the level of cold that she was. And then later it just seems so easy for her to talk about how much she loves her kids, whereas I feel like if we were going to keep with this gruff personality and she was still going to be self-sacrificing, it would have needed to be near impossible for her to talk to her kids like that. I don't know. It was just like a weird thing, and it really threw me off. And she also admits to giving the 107 lashes to Xaden when he and the rebel kids came, and she said that a part of their deal was she told Xaden that she was going to be bringing Violet into the Writers' Quadrant, and for part of, the protection of the rebellion kids, it was going to be their deal that Xaden keeps Violet safe, which we knew nothing about. When Mira sees Brennan again, not gonna lie, I didn't really see it coming. It is consistent with her character for Mira to punch her brother in the face, who she thought was dead for the past 6 years. I just didn't see it coming. During this time, we meet Xaden's ex-girlfriend. I hated that so much. She's a Griffin rider, and she's horrible, and also her signet is the ability to stir up people's emotions, which is kind of handy to have if you want to get even with your ex-boyfriend's current girlfriend. And we have to see her all the time because the rebels and the Griffin Riders are sort of teaming up, and they've made their own little mini war college to prepare to fight the Venom. And what's even worse is that she's kind of good at fighting. And so when Kat and Violet get paired to spar and it looks like Kat's gonna win, I was livid. Though I do love Antarna in the back of her mind, go for the eyes, it's the softest tissue. And then Terrence over here just please use some common sense, just go for the kneecap. Just felt gross when Violet realizes that Kat fights exactly like her because Xaden taught both of them. And then Kat says, does it hurt knowing that I had him first? Just, ew, I hated that. She tells us that she and Xaden were engaged. Engaged. It's pretty clear though that she only wanted Xaden for his like power and position. But Violet doesn't know that at the moment, and she's like ready to rip this girl's head off. Xaden, through their mind link, is like, I truly do not care if you kill her. Oh, it's just all so brutal. By the way, the reason Kat wants Xaden for his power and position is because Xaden is low-key the king of this little section of the world. I'm bad with maps. I didn't really pay too much attention to the different territories. But like, king position. Kat says, that's still my crown. And Rhiannon comes in with my favorite line, let's feed her to Sorrengail. It's about this time that we find out that Andarna is missing part of her wing and she can't really fly for a super long amount of time, which Andarna hates because she's kind of in her rebellious teen phase and she doesn't want to have to be in the little baby carrier on And Violet feels super guilty because, like, the reason Andarna doesn't have this is because she kept getting woken up and needed to use her powers and stuff to help Violet, and she couldn't basically grow correctly. There's a moment where she's practicing and she, like, holds her wing out and everyone, like, applauds. It's so funny. Meanwhile, the Venin have taken out a small town, and Xaden was there, and he says that it was 10 times as bad as the battle that they had in the last book. Dane and Violet are sort of repairing their friendship, which I still don't know how I feel about it, but they are researching together to try to figure out how the original wards were put up. That's why they need the texts from before all the history was changed, because Violet thinks, you know, on top of the original history that she could learn, they would also explain how they built wards, which is what they need to protect themselves against the Venin. It does mean that the Griffin Riders won't be able to yield anymore, like they won't have their magic if the wards are up. I don't remember why. This is the problem with reading a book super fast. It's because I can't hold on to all the information. Violet has been having these horrible nightmares where a Venin is talking to her, and in this most recent one, he says that she'll destroy the wards for love, and she's kind of losing it a little bit, and then Terrence in her mind, like, stop talking to yourself, it makes us look unstable. All the riders and the Griffin people have to decide if they're gonna go protect Bisgaias, because it seems like that is where the Venin are headed next. A good portion of them do, and they're starting to travel that way when Solus shows up, who, if we remember, he was the dragon who torched a bunch of kids in the beginning, and then was also Varish's dragon. Now, Solus is missing an eye. Why? Because Taryn attacked him when Varish was trying to punish Violet for Andarna not showing up to training. So he most definitely has a score to settle. A lot of things happen in this moment. Andarna tries to fight a giant dragon that's like double, triple her size. Kat stays behind to help Violet, proving that she has something of a heart, and Sloane's signet manifests. She is a siphon, which is sort of like a funnel for other people's powers. Xaden gets mad at Violet for putting herself in that situation because the reason she ended up running into that dragon was because she was trying to save Kat. And sort of during this argument, she takes a dig at Xaden about his agreement with her mom when it came to protecting the marked ones. And we've had this issue the whole book where Xaden is not going to tell her the full truth, but he says that he will answer any questions that she asks him as long as she knows what questions to ask, basically. And the more information that she's getting, the more questions are coming up, and it's just a total mess. And Xaden was like, well, if you knew about that, why didn't you ask about it? And she feels like she didn't want to know that the only reason Xaden kept her alive was because of her mom. She was like, oh, I wanted it to be because you liked me. Obviously he did. Like, that was just such a frustrating part of this book. This is why I love first books with enemies to lovers, because we're not like in the fighting part of the relationship yet. We're still in the like cutesy banter. Will they or will they not kill each other? Whereas in this book, it just felt like we were going back and forth so much, and it was so frustrating. And she really wants him to show his trust in her, and she asks what his second signet is. All of the marked kids have second signets, and Xaden like won't tell her. And he says that he can't, and that she'll hate him for it. And I just don't know what could possibly be that bad. But the Wyverns are coming and they need to put up the wards, so we get distracted momentarily. And as we're preparing, we do our best to pull up the wards. We have all these stones that have power in them, but we land back on this conversation. And finally, Xaden tells her that he's an intrinsic, which means you can like read people's minds. And he says it's not exactly him being able to read everyone's minds. He can just sort of read their intentions. So maybe he's not able to always hear the words that they're saying, but he can see what people are going to do and why. Taryn didn't know this, and through their bond, Violet feels like this, and it's because Sorrengail didn't tell him about Xaden's power. And like, honestly, maybe I'm underreacting. I didn't think it was that like, I get why he didn't tell her, because intrinsics immediately get executed. It's considered too dangerous of a power to have. We saw an intrinsic get killed the second he manifested in the last book. And Violet's sort of like angry. I just feel like he didn't really use his power on her that much, and he didn't manipulate her with it. And as soon as he says that, she's still mad. I wanted them to get over it. I was so tired of them fighting at this point that I was like, Violet, honestly, it's not that bad. But Violet's pissed, and so Taryn's like, if you would like me to scorch him, I will do it. But you do seem to be attached. Skip forward a bit. We don't have that much time to dive into this because the Verns are coming, they're hitting the wards, they're dropping dead. It seems like the wards are working, except the Griffin Riders still have their power, which means that the wards aren't all the way working. There's still something missing. When we finally get back to Basgiath and we realize that the college has sent away all their riders to go protect another place because they didn't think the Wyverns were actually going to come to the college, and so basically it's just whoever showed up to protect them and no one else. Violet's mom is still there, and she sees Brennan. He's not super nice to her. The battle begins, and Jack Barlow shows up, and he is a Venom. Now, we heard earlier that the healer, Nolan, who originally used to heal Violet and then poisoned her, had been working on mending a soul, and I don't know if he was trying, like, I'm just confused. I don't know if I missed that part or, like, zoned out during this explanation, but, like, was he trying to get the venom out of Jack Barlow, or was he just trying to heal the guy and then he later became a venom? I don't know where we landed on that. Sawyer, who is in the Fourth Wing contingent, basically the Liam of this book, if you ask me, has his leg eaten by a wyvern, looks like he's gonna die. Violet manages to get him to the infirmary, which, side note, the Sawyer-Jacina romance, totally here for it. I think it is adorable. Even though the wyvern attack was terrifying, I loved seeing how Violet and her mom were working together, where like her mom is moving the clouds because she has that power, and then Violet is using those moving clouds to strike down the wyverns with the lightning power, and it was such a good visual. I cannot wait for this to be a TV show. By the way, it's becoming a TV show, obviously, at this point. Indarna breathes fire for the first time, which is very exciting. And Jacina, who did stay behind at the college when everyone else basically evacuated, she's managed to get one of the translations down in these original texts that says that there is like an original 7. And we know there's only 6 writers, which means there's an original 7 dragons and basically like 7 dragon species. We only know of 6. Fun fact, we have no idea where Indarna came from. We have this revelation that the reason her scales are so shiny is because she's actually dark purple and she's not a black dragon like Taryn is. She's like one of the last of her kind. And not only that, she hatched for Violet. So like she had some control over when she was born, which what the heck. We get this kind of like theme where Violet has the brain of a scribe and the heart of a writer. And so once Indarna figured out that, you know, Violet was that person, she hatched so that she could bond with her. Even though she didn't know that Violet was going to be a writer, I feel like that's sort of a tiny, tiny plot hole. Violet, in her self-sacrificial manner, has decided to then go and finish putting up the wards herself. It is clearly killing her. So her mom comes in and like basically kicks her away from the stone that she's putting all of her power into and uses Sloane as a siphon to put all of her power into the stone that's going to bring back the wards. Her mom says that she'll see their dad soon and then dies. I'm crying at this point. Also, like, I just felt like this part was so, like, Divergent coded too with the parental sacrifice situation. But the wards are back up, and when they're all up properly, we see this sort of black fire, hence the iron flame. I almost don't even want to talk about the end. Xaden is now a Venom. And I know that the Venom was sort of like threatening Violet and stuff. I don't understand, like, first of all, how that happens. I didn't understand it with Jack either. Like, I must have missed it. Like, I really did listen to just too much information in a single day. But I don't know how that happened, because as far as we know, like, the venom poison is just, it'll kill you. So, like, when we read that around his eyes is, like, turning red and stuff, I was just like, how did that even happen? Like, I don't understand how venom are created. Oh my gosh. And the thing is, like, Xaden's still himself, which is almost worse. It's not like he's suddenly this, mindless enemy or has been taken over by something. Like, he realizes what's happening to him, and I think that's what, like, made it so much more heartbreaking. And at the end, I'm like, oh, so now we finally get a Xaden chapter when he's become a venom, and he goes to talk to Jack, who has been captured because earlier, when he showed up as a venom, Violet's like, we're gonna need to question him, so they just gave him that, the serum that blocks all of their powers. And so he's just, like, in jail. And Xaden goes and talks to him and is like, what is the cure? Jack says there's no cure to power. Like, why would you even want to be cured from this? And then, like, at least my understanding is that, like, he's still hanging out with Violet and he's going about his normal life, even though he feels this weird surge of power and need to use it. And I don't understand how this happened. I think in the next book, we're going to have, like, a situation where the power becomes too much for him. And it's going to be like the 4 and Triss thing, where 4 is under the simulation and Triss is trying to fight him off. Like, I don't know how we undo being a venom unless Nolan knows how to heal him or something. That just doesn't seem super likely to me. I think it's going to get to a point where everyone's going to be on the side of, we need to kill him to protect the rest of us. And Xaden's also going to be on that side. But again, if Xaden dies, like, it sort of is gonna domino effect to Sorrengail, and then to Taryn, and then to Violet, and then maybe to Andarna. That's where we are. I feel hurt in my, like, real feelings, though. I do feel like Xaden is endgame. I know that was, like, one of the theories was, like, maybe he isn't, but I feel like he is. The way that this book was written, I was like, there's no way that they're not endgame. But I also can't sit through another book of them fighting the way that they did in this book. I cannot, like, handle that. So I hope we figure it out. And then if the whole series is 5 books, then yeah, I'm still, like, not exactly sure where their romance is gonna go from that point, unless the next book is like, we're so in love, self-sacrifice for one another, see who can get killed first, basically. I find that annoying as well. Because I finished this book only a couple hours ago, I don't really know what I rate it yet. I haven't had time to, like, marinate. I feel like it's probably around, like, a 7 and a bit for me, because, like, I loved Fourth Wing so much, but I also feel like this book sort of suffered a bit from, like, second book syndrome, where, like, all these things are established and we're really having to get into more of, like, the politics and the fighting of things, and also that second phase of the relationship where they're already together, which in books I find to be, like, a little annoying. What would you rate it? How do you feel about them fighting the whole book? How do you feel about Xaden being a venom? Do you think that all 3 kids are going to make it out of this book with Mira, Brennan, and Violet? Because I don't think so. I think Mira's going to get sacrificed at some point in this series, so I don't want to get super attached to her. If Rhiannon dies, I'm done. If Andarna dies, I am so done. And that's all my thoughts. Please like this video if you liked it. Click subscribe if you want to talk about more book stuff. My name's Katelyn. Thanks for watching. Bye!